Hello, everyone. This is John Goetz from Gaming and Leisure, and welcome to another edition of GNL Voice. And on today's line, we have Michael Linton from Cendyn. He is the head of global gaming and general counsel there. And Michael has a wide range of industry expertise and specific on the casino and resort background. He served as the general manager of LasVegas.com, where he oversaw the operation of the travel-oriented e-commerce division there. And he was the legal counsel for Travel Tipper, which acquired Pegasus in 2019 and then was merged with Cendyn in 2022. And in what he does now is he focuses on the company's growth in the gaming and hospitality arena and on the legal arena there. And just a couple of highlights. Michael, I see where you completed an enlistment in the U.S. Navy. So
That's
that's
right.
great. You have your undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship from UNLV.
That's right.
That's a cool degree. And then you graduated from law school and you passed the bar on your first attempt. So
Lucky me. Yeah.
yes. So, welcome to GNL Voice, and I want to thank you for your service to the country. So,
My
um,
pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
yes. So, today for our audience, we're going to talk about CRS and call centers and how they've evolved over the years and how the gaming and leisure industry uses that functionality. And I've been in the gaming arena for several years, and not so long ago, I was doing some consulting with a gaming organization, gaming and hospitality, and they had to staff an entire call center. And this was before the internet, so it was 24/7, people on phones. People could not call in and make a reservation. They could not call in or they could not go online and make changes to the reservations or anything to do with the call centers. They all had to be interactive with human beings. So I want to start off by, how has the technology changed since the days of no internet?
Well, it's changed quite rapidly. I think I'm sure quite drastically from the time that you've referenced earlier in those days. But what's interesting in particular about, I think, the casino space is that when it comes to comp bookings and booking player offers, player rates, um, surprisingly, a lot of it still hasn't quite evolved, and that's where when customers start working with us at Cendyn, we tend to make a pretty large impact to that operation, mainly because players, obviously they want their comps. They still have to call in for, I'd say, 97+% of casino customers that I talk to who aren't using our solutions. I ask them, how do your players book comps and special offers? They have to call their host, or they have to actually dial into the call center, which is what requires a lot of gaming, and leisure operations to maintain some sort of the same style large call center operations that you had mentioned. Even in today's environment, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was doing some research, and it said here that the call center software market will be worth $150 billion by 2030. Is that on track with what you're learning on in Cendyn is working towards?
I absolutely think so. I mean, in particular, especially I think COVID woke a lot of operations up to this, and they felt the pressing burn and desire and need to really streamline and bring more modern architecture and solutions into their call center environments. And really, I guess, speaking further through that, one of the main reasons was that we found, not just in gaming, but across hospitality around the globe, and customers in every market coming out of COVID, they had a major staffing issue where they just couldn't get people to want to come back to work. I mean, I had some of the largest resorts in Vegas, where they used to have some of the most coveted jobs, and even these call centers. I know when I moved to Vegas and I went to UNLV, I got a job at the Wynn at the front desk, and it was like a huge score. It was hard to get those jobs, and then fast forward to 2020, coming out of COVID, I'm talking to some of these very same resorts, and they're saying, man, I'm paying signing bonuses to get call center agents and
Wow.
security officers. it was really something interesting. And I think a lot of it has to do with also just the new demographic or the, millennial workforce coming into those positions where some of the more, legacy style property management systems aren't as user friendly. So you get somebody in, maybe you got them as a hire, you start training them and they're like, never mind, I'm out of here, I'll go find another job. So that's really what we were, tasked with, up front, was really to streamline that call center operation to make it easier for the agent to book a room reservation, but really multiply that, difficulty by, in tenfold at a minimum for a casino, because they're not just dealing with FIT customers calling to book, their vacation or their business travel. They have players calling that they want their comps. And it's, with the more sophisticated methodologies for comping players, that can be a quite cumbersome process when done manually by an agent versus point, click, yes, your offer is available, let me get you into your room today.
Mm-hmm. So you brought up a good thing, in that, COVID, we've had lots of articles in the magazine that talked about, post-COVID and the continuity of the business, and how, how it's become an endemic, thing now. We just have to live with COVID. It's just what it is. So you mentioned how that affected, post-COVID. How are things going on now? Are you still facing the same issues at Cendyn, or?
I don't think that we're, our customers' issues, obviously the hotels, the casinos, resorts, they end up becoming our issues and what we try to solve for. I haven't heard as much. I think some of the labor is coming back, which is good. But again, I think that sort of awoken some of the industry to adding more sophisticated systems to make their operations more streamlined. If anything, I'd say it's come back pretty strong in terms of travel with a vengeance. I mean, it's pretty public information that Vegas is definitely back. The conventions are back. We have G2E in person this year. Really excited to go to. I was just at TribalNet last week up in Reno. I mean, we've been going to all these conferences and they're jam packed. And I tell you, even as a local, but when I go out to a local casino to get, dinner or something with my wife, they're packed like all the time. And it's great. It's great to see the industry sort of surging again. And I think that's all the more reason for really these operations to get smarter about the way they're implementing, their operational technologies, and how they're acquiring their bookings, how they're segmenting out their, their customers, and making sure that, they're teed up to accommodate the new ongoing demand. And hopefully it just keeps going up, right?
Yeah. And this is a perfect segue in, because you talked about how technology has had to evolve. To me, it's the pre-internet days, and now it's PC days, post-COVID.
Right.
Yeah. How has Cendyn adapted its technologies to accommodate that? First,
Sure.
when the internet first came on, and now maybe we had to dial in to servers. Now it's cloud. And so how have things evolved from your perspective?
So I mean, really, the Cendyn CRS, which powers the call center, booking engines, all our connectivity. What's good about it is, that's been cloud native from day one. That was originated with a company called Travel Tripper, which is who I started with. As you mentioned in my intro, we bought Pegasus, and then now we're part of Cendyn. So that's all on technology that was established in the early 2000s. And even at that time, a lot of people weren't using the cloud, but we've been AWS from day one. So it's been great for scalability, security, especially with all the ongoing data, privacy concerns and everything else. We're always on the forefront of that. But something really exciting that we've recently done was, our CRS is API robust. So the booking engine, the call center application, all of it, we surface up, even the user interface that the back of house employees at any casino or resort property use, we're surfacing with our own APIs. So something that actually originated from COVID, for that very same reason that you mentioned, we talked about with having difficulty getting agents. More and more we heard call center operations facing difficulties with abandonment rates far above, industry norm, and call queues that were just atrocious, and it was terrible for their service. And it wasn't because the casino, didn't staff up appropriately on purpose. They were having trouble getting staff, in and of itself.
Yeah.
So one of our casino partners asked us to begin working with a conversational voice AI technology. The best way I could explain it would be like an Alexa for room reservations.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
it's really slick. It's connecting to our APIs, and that robot effectively can book a room reservation, including a casino comp, special offer, all through connecting to our APIs. And that's live now. We launched that over the summer with one of our casino partners that has 5 casino properties across the US, and a third-party voice AI provider. And we're now working with various voice AI providers, exposing our APIs to them, because we try to be system agnostic from our, casino or hotel customers' perspective. We're not going to force you to work with only us or only us and our other vendors. It's like we can play with everybody. If this is the voice AI provider you want to work with, great. We can connect with that solution just as we can with any property management system.
Yeah. And, you brought up the API, and almost every year that the Gaming and Leisure Roundtable has gone on, during the conversations between the property executives and the vendors, the business partners, one thing that always comes up is the API issue. And that is, the casino hotels want APIs. They don't want to have to do custom integrations for every single interface they have. So it's a good that I hear that Cendyn is providing that.
Absolutely.
So the voice part is very interesting. So how does that technology handle, and this is more curiosity on my part,
Sure.
Accents, or how does that
So yeah, it's really the one that our one partner that we originally launched this with, and we're actually it's been picking up pretty rapidly. Once we started telling our set of partners that we have this, almost every single one of them wants to work with it, because for natural reasons, right? Like if it's not interrupting the guest experience and the stats are there and you're not frustrating your customer, why wouldn't you want to provide that convenience? But what's cool about the one that they'd selected, and I can't speak for everyone else in the market, but they can make the voice sound however the property wants. Like, for instance, that particular property, they had this voice AI provider listen to their best agent, like a few hours of calls, and they modeled the voice AI bot to sound like her. It's pretty cool. So they could, I think they could probably go as far as, and again, I don't want to speak for an external provider, but what's cool about it, I kind of nerd out over this stuff too. I'm like, wow, that's like really awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Like, I think they could even make it where they knew the call was coming in from a certain region. They could adjust the dialect and if they really wanted to get that granular. But I think for the most part, the hotel probably doesn't want to pay for that. So it's like, let's get a good, clean, voice representation of our property, and we'll roll with that. But yeah, I found it pretty impressive myself, where I've been listening to calls, just because a lot of focus on this from the company in general. We want to make sure that our APIs are working cleanly with this, and there's no bottlenecks in that technology, using ultimately our CRS and call center application to process these room reservations. And I find myself listening and forgetting that it's a robot, and until it hits some of the rigid points of the conversation of like, I have you coming in on this day, and you're like, all right, that sounded a bit robotic, but
yeah,
for the most part, like, I don't know, when you talk to Alexa and you ask her to, turn on the lights or something, it's pretty clean with the way it works.
yeah. It's speaking of accents, I'm live in Minnesota and now Wisconsin, so I was in an elevator and talking with folks, and they asked me where I was from, and I said, Minnesota, And when they left, I heard him. They said, "Did you hear his accent? He's from Minnesota." And me, I don't have an accent, but I guess to
No,
them
that's
I
funny.
did. So
I'm originally from the East Coast, and I've lived out west since 2007, but I go back home and I feel like I almost start picking up that like Baltimore like style accent. And
yes,
it's funny, I pick up on it now too. I'm like, are you from like Maryland by any chance? And they're like, yeah, no,
yes.
totally. Yeah.
People always just bring up the Fargo accent to me.
I know that's immediately why I kind of giggled when you said that. I'm like, I just think of Fargo.
So, another, stats, I was doing some research, and it says businesses lose approximately $75 billion a year due to poor customer service. So, how does that translate into what Cendyn is providing, and how do you improve customer service with that,
Sure. I mean, and really like if like not to like go into the full kitchen sink of what we offer, but one of the main things we've been bringing to market, particularly in the gaming vertical, is the fact that Cendyn originated as a CRM company, right? So, our CRM is, we pride ourselves on having the best hotel hospitality focused CRM in the market. It's built for hotels. It's focused on marketing to hotel customers, retaining and messaging hotel customers. So you have that, and then you have, Cendyn acquired Rainmaker, I think it may be 2019, which is
Mhm.
very gaming focused revenue management system. And then, with the merger with Pegasus, which was a very gaming focused, CRS. I mean, don't get me wrong, we serve every hotel across the industry, but I think anyone in the gaming space will, acknowledge and agree that we do some things that are a lot different from the broader hotel and hospitality industry in gaming. Like, it's sometimes frustrating from a gaming operator's perspective to try to cram a generalized hospitality solution into their realm because it doesn't necessarily hit the point. So that's what we've done to try to make it better. But I mean, you get into the CRM, RMS, and CRS. In my opinion, that's really the golden child, if you will, of how you address and make customer service better. Think it from the top of it, right? The CRM, that's knowing your player, having their profile, and that's not necessarily going like casino management system like a IGT or Bally's. Like that's their thing. We don't want to touch that. But knowing the gamer's value, and then also knowing, hey, this person likes to go to the spa. They like to eat at the steak restaurant. They typically come on the weekends. They typically come for this holiday every year. You're starting to build an understanding of that guest, and that's when you can do something really powerful. And that's what we're excited about at Cendyn with the combination of these platforms. In that the RMS, the revenue management system, formerly known as Rainmaker, it's called Guest Rev today. That's pricing customers based off of their value to the casino as they're shopping the booking engine or as they're calling into the call center. The booking engine and the CRS and the call center application, that's allowing those agents to take in that information and to book that reservation for them. And then the CRM is gathering all that data to make sure that you're segmenting out, those players and those loyal customers and saying, okay, I'm going to do a casino promotion. Maybe it's a comp, and instead of going so broad and just, unpersonalized, I know I'm going to send this email out to my players that are getting the comp, but I know they love going to the spa. So let me personalize the email and make it a little bit more, focused on what I know they like. Things like that, I think, is what takes it to that 5-star level of service digitally, if you will, because you're not just sort of, okay, well, I got to get an offer out. Let me just tear the page. Here's a picture of the loyalty club. Here's your comp. It's like, no, hey, John, I know that when you come, you like to eat here, you like this, you like that. It makes it feel more personalized. And I think the broader consumer set is becoming accustomed to that. Like you go to Amazon, it knows what you and your family who may share that account, what you're shopping for, what you may need to reorder. And that's just what I believe everyone's coming to expect.
Yeah, there's everyone says, yeah, I talked about X, Y, or Z. So I went into then when next time I went into Amazon, there it was. But there's all sorts of algorithms that study that know who you're related to and know that you could be shopping for your mother, and it's that technology is incredible.
Yeah.
But you
And
brought up a
what's
good,
interesting about that too, right, is like the lawyer, I mean, thinks about all the data privacy laws. Like you need a company that really understands all of this and can keep you in compliance while also leveraging what, is legally available to you. So it's
yes,
a good balance act. It
yeah.
really is.
Um, you brought up a good point when you were talking about the systems talking to one another. And like I said, I used to do work in the industry more directly years ago. And the concept of revenue management way back when, this is when, early 90s was
Sure.
very new. So the old concept of revenue management was an Excel spreadsheet that, had some things
Right.
on. Marketing programs were maybe a birthday promotion where you got something on your birthday. Um, and then never did the two systems talk to one another. The hotel systems were over here, the casino systems were over here. Now there's a huge they're being connected now. So the birthday marketing program is expanding. Revenue management now is so elaborate and the technology behind it is incredible. How have you seen that evolve?
I mean, and I think you nailed it, right? And I think anyone listening to this, probably more than half of them would probably still feel that there's a big disconnect between hotel operations, revenue management, marketing, maybe like even hotel marketing versus casino marketing, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
all of them are using different systems and none of them are necessarily aligning. And it's funny, we talk to casinos all the time and they say, if I say, here's a scenario, what if next week, call it a big box property, you have 1,000 rooms, and what if next week you were supposed to have a big group in, there's supposed to be 500 rooms, but the company just announced that they went bankrupt and that conference is now canceled. So you have 500 rooms pulled out Monday to Thursday. What do you do? They'd be like, well, we would probably start discounting FIT, but we would want to also start sending out casino offers. So, okay, what do you have to do to create that offer? And most of them, they'd walk me through it. It would be like a day or, to a couple day process that, well, we'd have to meet with marketing. We'd have to meet with, this group. We have to make sure that everyone knew what was going on because otherwise they end up tripping over one another. And that's, one of the, I think, unique values that Cendyn brings to the market, having these vital systems. There's no other, competitor on the market that has robust vital systems like a RMS, CRM, and CRS all under one roof that ultimately can interconnect with one another and really allow those more operational efficiencies. So the revenue team can focus more on strategy and optimizing and filling the property at the highest rate. Marketing can focus on deploying those more personalized campaigns.
Mhm.
Operations can focus on not pulling their hair out and being upset about how are we going to fill the hotel next week. They can focus on the guest and their arrival experience. So it's still, I think, pretty prevalent from what I've seen out there in that disconnect. But the more and more hotels think about their tech stack, I think they're making decisions to try and find those key integrations that are
Yeah.
products.
How has the cloud changed that technology? Like you said, the scalability of the servers and the amount of data that goes back and forth. This, you don't have the huge server rooms that you used to. At least maybe not all casinos have. They might still have some of their server rooms, but it's not needed anymore. I know there's some regulatory issues with data on the cloud and so forth, but how has the cloud
It's been, I mean, I think the cloud has changed the game for everybody. It's made things much more, you can make decisions much more, rapidly as opposed to, I don't have to go now add a server or figure out how I'm going to handle this. It's also made, I think, things like, the evolution of online shopping. And as we've seen, even in general, even from my OTA pass, like customers are booking mobile now. I mean, if you think about when you book a flight, you don't, unless you're sitting in front of your computer doing work and you're like, all right, I have to book this business flight. You're 9 times out of 10, if you're booking a trip, you're going to knock it out from your phone because there's either an app or something like that for it. So what we've seen really is that it's with the shift of that, like you have things like Cyber Monday or Black Friday sales.
Hmm.
We used to have customers who, when we switched to us, they'd have concern about server capacity because their site would crash on Cyber Monday. Like, can't tell you how many hotels, large casino properties I've talked to. They would tell me every Cyber Monday our site crashed before they switched to our booking engine, and they would ask us, "What's your capacity?" And the answer was simple. It was unlimited. It's Amazon, it's AWS. They have server warehouses all over the globe, and our contract allows us to add capacity in seconds. I mean, it's a matter of a flick of an email out to somebody like, "Hey, I want to expand to this." So it's I think it's provided a lot of flexibility to help the industry evolve and for us to build some of these full solutions, right? Because there's a lot of data exchanging between systems. I don't know that would be as feasible on some of the legacy style platforms that exist, a decade ago even.
Yeah, it's amazing how the cloud has changed things because I remember having to switch out a hard drive or add more memory to a server. I mean, you had to order it, you had to have a tech come and do it, you had downtime.
Right.
Now it's like you said, an email to someone, someone at Amazon or to Azure or whatever, to say, maybe even during this time frame, we're going to need,
extra capacity
extra capacity.
Expected. Yeah. And that's, one of the things we pride ourselves on for the booking engine side is that we have, no outage releases effectively. So the end consumer would never know that we're, doing a release because we're able to keep the system up. And that is made possible by, how we're structured within the cloud and how we've architected the solution. So, I mean, which is vital for your booking systems, right? It's one thing for potentially, a non-essential back of house solution to go off for a few minutes, but I mean, depending on the time of day, if you're dropping your booking engine or your call center, that means you're not putting heads in beds. So that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's amazing how the technology has changed. There's no more, on some certain, software dev organizations, you have the downtimes at, Fridays or whatever.
Right.
Amazon, and I know most about AWS, but so I refer to that. So I'm just going to maybe globally, the cloud has changed that technology. So, we can have blue-green deployments where we can test in the prod environment without affecting the customer, and then flip a switch and boom, it's all of those changes are activated, and it's just amazing. It's sometimes when you hear the reports about AI and taking over the world, it just does get kind of
yeah, it's
interesting.
getting crazy. I mean, when I first started at Travel Tripper in 2015, if you would have told me that you could have a cleanly, spoken AI, robot effectively book a room reservation, I would have, been like, that's insane.
Yep.
But here we are today, 7 years from there, and it's happening. And a lot of that is just, I think, the underlying infrastructure that's made possible because cloud-based solutions, API-driven formats where it's just quick and easy to get someone to integrate to a platform, so long as they're accustomed to working with APIs, because that's something else we come across is, we have the APIs, but that doesn't mean the other vendor has the skill set to work with them. And that's not like to out the other vendor, but some of the more old school platforms that I've come across, sometimes it's, the customer may be a little frustrated because they're like, why isn't this working? And it's like, I can't write their scripts for them. I can expose it and they can do what they need to do. But for the most part, that's far and few between. But obviously, everybody needs to understand how the APIs work.
Yeah, I run into that this day and age where we've written an API on our side of the fence, but the company that's going to, or the organizations that's going to use it, they have to have the technology expertise on their side to program to it.
Yeah.
So what I find is a lot of times, they have a technology department, but it's not a software development.
That's right.
There's apples.
That's 100% right. It's very different. Like in-house IT is much different from like an engineer type resource.
Yes.
And it's varied for me from property to property. And usually, like when we come across, and I try to, I ask those probing questions. Like say, for instance, if somebody wants us to integrate to their casino loyalty database for us to allow comps and special offers to be booked, on the booking engine, or even, through the call center application. We try to ask those questions. For one, we'll show them our, reverse API spec. Like, is there someone on your team that can speak to this? And I'm not an engineer. I just know enough of, dealing with enough customers of like, let's try to talk through this, because I don't want you to like take this and think you're going to go do it and then be disappointed. Because if you don't think you have that resource, let me see if we can work in our network where I can maybe find you a consultant that can come in that's familiar with this and can do it on a limited engagement and get you guys set up and you're out the door. So I've been very impressive. I've had some tribal properties I've exposed our APIs to, and they've built to them, and we've tested and completed for a casino loyalty integration in a matter of like 3 weeks, which is pretty impressive. And it's not even like that it takes that amount of time. It's just people's schedules and then building it, setting up the endpoint. But, and then you'd be surprised you come across another property that you would think they would have the resources, and it's not, progressing. And it's through no fault if you don't have that skill set. I know I don't, but the idea is identify it. Let's get somebody in there to help you, because, you need to make sure your internal systems can speak to some of these external systems you're working
on. And it's the understanding of what's needed, but letting the property know up front that you need a technical resource to do that, and if you don't have it, so the CRS and the call center applications, I know they have a direct impact on the customers. And when I say customers, I'm talking about the people who are staying in the hotel or being at the casino. Now I want to ask about the other customer, the casino operations or the hotel operations customer. How are they? How have their operations been modified using Cendyn's tools?
Sure. I mean, really, what's interesting about the call center application itself that we have, it's really just our general call center application, but it really is a casino call center application. It was built from the ground up for a large casino client. Our product resources literally sat there for weeks on end, listening in on calls, shadowing agents, identifying bottlenecks, trying to build a solution that resolved their problems. And their problems were that, you have, even if you have more than one property, let's say you have 10 properties, they could all be on the same PMS, or they could be on varying PMS, especially with the expansion. And sort of, that's another thing that seemed to have come out of COVID, was the sell-off and acquisitions. Like, you have the Bally's of the world that bought up a lot of properties in a very quick period of time. A lot of those properties were using the same PMS. I know just because we work with them. But the idea is that anybody in that position, they could be buying properties that are on different PMSs. Like, some could be on LMS, this one's on Opera, this one's on HMS. They need a solution that can allow a centralized call center agent to look into one system to book all of these different properties. So that was the problem that we were tackling. So we built that application, and what we found was, immediately that it reduced training time for the agent. In that, imagine if you had to train those agents on 3 different property management systems to book room reservations, or even to use maybe a more old school style property management system that's not very user friendly and point and click, was more skill based. The training time on that could be 4 to 8 weeks. What we found was that, and this was coming directly from the property, they got it down to like 4 days. They had an agent fully ready to where they could go ahead and take room reservations on their own without like having somebody shadowing them directly. So that, I mean, that in and of itself, I think, is amazing, right? From the turnover in call centers, forget COVID and everything else, there's always a turnover. You have your attrition, you're always having to retrain. So when you get your training time cut down, your recruiting and training investment goes down substantially. So there's a big cost savings there. Another thing we found with the call center is because the agents aren't taking as much time to complete reservations, and they're able to get to the information they need sooner, and it's more accurate, that the call center conversion rate goes up, and the abandonment rate and everything goes down because calls are shorter, People are waiting, for a shorter period of time. When they get on the phone, it's not some long drawn out process, because most call centers, particularly casino call centers, if you call and they're not using a solution like ours, they say, hey, I want to come in, I'm going to book this comp I got. Okay, can I have your player card number? Let me look you up. And they're going to the player card system. Look you up. Okay, John Smith. Got it. Let me see. This guy's an ADT of what? That means in the segment 5 player. They're looking at some grid, and then they're going in and they're punching in all these offers to see if it's available when this person wants to come in. And a lot of times, a casino player, they don't even know when they want to come in. They may just say, when can I come this month? It's comp. And if the agent doesn't know, they're doing that clickety clack across various, date ranges, trying to plug in various offers, which can be a very cumbersome process. With our platform, they can look the player up within the same exact platform, see the offers they have available, click on that offer, have it pre-populate the dates it's available, search it, it's available, book it. They can book up to 9 reservations in sort of one sitting. They can combine points. They can combine credit cards. Lots of efficiencies that were built in. And it was, again, based off of what our product team observed in watching this massive call center operate for a gaming operation. So I think there's tremendous operational efficiencies that our customers are, reaping the benefits of, not to mention, the increased revenue, which, it's more difficult to attribute that. But if you think through the logical process of increased conversion, so for one, there's a little, incremental revenue coming in there. But then on top of that, the faster I fill the house up and I convert reservations, the more, if I have a good RMS or revenue team in place, they should be yielding my rate up. So I yield out at the right rate and I'm putting the right customers in the room at the right price as demand, builds up that compression. So it's an incredibly powerful tool that most of the time when anyone sees it, they immediately want to buy it. So it's it sort of sells itself.
Wondering if you have any stats for what I'm going to ask next, because while you were talking, I was thinking about my experiences when I'm, on the phone with someone, and if it's taking too long, I just okay, I'm moving on and I'll hang up. I'm trying not to be rude. I'll just hang up.
Both.
Yeah. Whereas if I'm working with an organization and it's quick and it's fast and they don't have to put me on hold to go over to this system to check it, I'm going to go back to that vendor or that customer. Have you
100%? I mean, and I feel like it's like to your point earlier where you're talking about how does it sort of affect the guest, the hotel guest. That's exactly it there, right? I mean, this is an extension of your own property experience. And it's one of those things that this is behind the scenes. They don't know what tools the agents are working with, but what they do know is, man, I got right through. I spoke to my agent. They immediately addressed what I needed. And I was off the phone in like no time. That was great. Man, I feel good about this trip. Then they get there and you're reinforcing it with, wow, I arrived and, they checked me in really fast. I got a great room, saw a great show, enjoyed the meals. Now they're loving it. And then if you have a powerful CRM, like the Cendyn CRM, eInsight, plugging all our products, then, you're bringing them back and just continuing in that cycle of, great customer experience. And of course, if there are hiccups, you're identifying them, addressing them, and retaining that customer. It's all about, in my opinion, really like the digitalization of the guest service experience through technology is the best way I could put it.
Yeah, it's amazing how just using the right systems can help the customer experience. And I was on the same website. It says 32% of businesses are implementing CRM systems to boost sales and enhance their customer relationships. So it's it's the trend that's happening. Are you seeing that Cendyn's products and the CRM systems and the call center systems are increasing, as the technology and people are more adept at the technology?
Yes, and particularly, like the tribal space, it's interesting, and really regional casinos. During COVID, a lot of things really, like COVID was a monstrous little thing that had a lot of little offshoots. And another one of them was that a lot of the regional properties, they made a lot of money, particularly tribal properties, because they weren't forced to shut down. And in many areas, they were like the only game in town that was open.
Mhm.
So they made a tremendous, amount of revenue during that time. And, a lot of these tribal shows I go to, many tribal properties that didn't have a hotel, now we're building a 500, room hotel tower. And it's like, it's amazing, but they're also really doubling down and investing in their technology, where before they may have not been doing that, but they've realized that, you know what, we have budget, let's do this thing, let's do it right. So we can make sure we continue to evolve and we continue to see this kind of growth, because it's not really possible to really, I think, even sustain or manage even in present environment with antiquated, disjointed systems. It's just not a recipe for success in any shape or form.
Mhm. Yeah, I keeps going back to my days in the industry, so to speak, and I know people are resistant to change. They're scared of change.
Always. Yep.
And I remember the days when the front desk people making a reservation with people lined up, green screens, keyboard, and
Yep.
when the GUI technology came and the mouse and so forth, it was people hated it because they could do things a lot faster on their keyboard than they could
Right.
with the mouse. So how are the employees at the casinos and hotels adapting and taking on the new?
What's interesting is when we were building the call center application, we actually had that very concern, because some of these places, some in Vegas in particular, they've had agents that have been there for 20 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And and they're amazing at their job, but they could fly through one of those screens, clickety clacking, quick keys so fast that, like, it's like kind of what you see on TV when you go up to an airline counter and let me check. Like,
Boom, here's your ticket.
yeah. But we actually build in those quick keys. That way, if the agent doesn't want to touch the mouse, they could go through and book a reservation using quick keys to accommodate those star performers, right? The goal isn't to sort of wean those people out, because if they're great reservation agents and they've been serving you well, you don't want to be that speed bump or something that makes them like, is this really for me anymore? So
Right.
we've tried to build some of that in. Granted, anytime any technology though is introduced, it's going to be a little bit, literally anywhere you're going to have some pushback. And I think it's human nature. It's change, and it's a matter of like, well, I'm used to doing it this way, or wait a minute, if you're going to start automating this, like, what does that mean for me?
Mm-hmm.
And really, I think it's a matter of educating everybody, all the stakeholders. And what I always encourage is, in going in and working with a potential customer or an existing customer, we get into, if you want to bring any of your star performers or end users in, we're happy to show you, and have their buy-in so they see what we're actually going to be delivering. And usually when they see like, oh, this is awesome, like, granted, my job is still valuable, but if you can automate this piece of it, because that isn't the part that most people like anyway, then that's amazing. Like,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and do that. Just like somebody who enjoys their job as a call center agent, they enjoy talking to people. They're people persons. And what they probably don't enjoy is their call center supervisor saying, we have queues, and the pressure of that, like, 20-minute queue, what's going on? And they're like trying to rush them. So that's taking the burden off of them. If you're using things like conversational voice AI plugged into our call center app, or even just the call center app by itself, you're making the reservation process more seamless, so you don't have that queue build up, and you don't have the call abandonment, and you don't have customers, ready to wring your neck through the phone when they get on because they've been waiting for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I think once they realize that, they become a supporter of it. And one interesting thing that I forgot to bring up with one of these initial customers we launched with the voice AI, with some of the initial stats they were seeing was that it was reducing live agent call volume by 30%, in a given time set.
Wow.
And the voice AI was handling over 10% of room reservation inquiries. So if you think about it, the remainder of that 30% of voice reduction is likely coming from answering basic PBX style questions, like, what time is checkout? When's the earliest I could check in? That's the things that these voice AI technologies can accommodate and answer those questions. So if you think about it through that lens, I just think personally, if I were a call center agent, I even remember when I was at the front desk when they had us answering front desk calls instead of PBX. You call the front desk, you get some time out on the desk, some time in the back room. When our queues were up, it was like crazy stressful. And it's just as bad as being a front desk agent with a line that's 150 customers deep. You don't want to talk to that customer who was in slot 149 when they get up to the desk, because they're probably not in a good mood unless you've been serving champagne the whole time they've been there.
Yeah, I was another stat is 87% of employees in call centers report that their jobs are the highest stress level of their career.
It's not surprising.
Yeah.
It's pressure, right? And then the customer only reinforces it because it's human nature again. Like, you just got off a 4-hour flight from the East Coast and now you're waiting in line in the place that you're spending how much money for the night? Like,
yeah,
the hotel doesn't want that either, which is again just reinforces you need the right technology in place at each checkpoint of the guest journey, from when they're first introduced to your property, be it a digital marketing campaign, to when they're booking your property and engaging with it online, to when you're interacting with them pre-stay, during stay, post-stay, to obviously when they're on site and they're pulling up to the valet. If you do it right, it can really, I think, make for happier employees and in turn happier guests.
Yeah, and I guess that employees that stay employees, because the turnover rate, I'm sure,
right,
is something that we don't, that just becomes an issue. And then customers that come back, when they know that they don't have to wait in line, whether it be at the front desk or on the telephone, all because of the technology being used, that
right.
makes things so much better. So Michael, our time is about up, but I want to thank you for spending your afternoon or part of your afternoon with GNL Voice. I have learned a lot. So Michael, if any of our listeners or viewers wanted to get a hold of you and talk to you about Cendyn's products, how would they do that?
Sure, I can be reached directly on my cell phone anytime, 702-449-5852. Or if you're an email kind of person, I can be reached directly by email. It's mlinton, Linton, @cendyn.com.
Okay. So Michael, thanks again for your time, and hopefully maybe I'll talk to Jeannie and see about getting Cendyn and you on another GNL Voice episode.
Absolutely, would enjoy that very much. I appreciate you all having us. You guys have been great partners.
Yes.
We love working with you.
Thank you, Michael. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.